First of all, I want to thank my fellow board members for their time and attention. I know it is 9 o'clock. I will try to keep this brief. Don't worry, it's rehearsed. And to our guests, thank you so much for attending the meeting tonight to hear the final two member presentations. And thank you for attending any of our meetings, as well as just any town meetings in general. But at this board, I greatly value your interest and input. For those of you who don't yet know me, my name is Adrienne Paquin. I was born and raised right here on this peninsula, spent all my formative years here. And yes, as some have heard me mention before, I even went to 6th grade on the HRA land. I'll just always brag about that. This is my first elected position. I have no background in real estate, construction, even governmental procedures. I am here because I love and care about my town, and I care about this unique piece of property. The HRA was established in 1961. It is now 2024. To misquote the talking heads, how did we get here? And I hope those who know the story will humor me for a brief look back in time. I wanted to start with a reminder of the article at special town meeting that triggered this authority's existence in 1961. This is the text of the motion by the advisory board. There were two goals laid out in the motion in special town meeting. A redevelopment authority is needed for A, the purpose of clearance of substandard or decadent areas, and B, engaging in an urban renewal land assembly and redevelopment project. I think we can all agree that one of those goals was completed, in fact, 1.5, we could say. In addition to this mandate, in 1965, the board members at that time created additional goals. Here is the first set of HRA goals that I could find. First, 3 goals. 1, the reduction and long-term stabilization of taxes by generating additional sources of revenue for the town of Hull. 2, the improvement of business activities in Hull. And 3, the achievement of higher market values for properties in Hull. Throughout the years, the HRA has changed their goals. The HRA has widened its purview to include supporting various causes in town, including the goal to transfer half the AJ Lane monies, the nearly $2 million letter of credit from the failed development in the late 80s, to the town. That was a goal of the HRA. I did go through all the financial documents I had access to and found that the HRA has given nearly $2 million to the town or various town organizations since 2000. Within the past 10 years, this authority voted to alter their stated goals to be as follows: to create a sense of place in our community through development that provides tax revenue, open space recreation, job growth, improved business environment, event venues, and parking for Nantasket Beach within an effective and efficient traffic pattern for Hull citizens and visitors. So as you can see, already in the past 60 years, the HRA has adjusted its goals and actions to align with town needs throughout the years. So reviewing these many years of mandates, goals, and actions by the HRA, I went to our legal counsel with a simple question. Given the money allocated to the HRA by the federal government, what are our present obligations to the federal or state government? Our legal counsel's answer was none. The HRA is not bound by any mandates to do any specific thing with the land. Of course, if we are to do an urban renewal plan, as seems to be the best course, we are held by the guidelines of urban renewal plans. But other than that, we have fulfilled any and all obligations to federal or state governments. And again, looking back at that original town meeting vote, we have accomplished 1.5 out of 2 so far. Now, speaking of urban renewal plans. Chapter 121B, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 121B, are the laws that govern urban renewal and this authority. They state, as part of their declaration of necessity, the options for what one can do with the land. And reading here, it can be used for residential, governmental, recreational, educational, hospital, business, commercial, industrial, or other purposes, including the provision of streets, parks, recreational areas, and other open spaces. Those are the options for what can be done under an urban renewal plan. If we pair our lack of federal or state obligations with the options allowed in an urban renewal plan, we have the freedom to do what our town needs and wants now, today, in 2024. And speaking of what the town wants, let's talk about some town feedback. Back last year in February and March of 2023, there were 2 sets of meetings involving the current draft urban renewal plan presented to the town. And Dan and I did not collaborate, so it's annoying that we both chose the same polls, but here we are. This poll was done at the first set of meetings, both the in-person and Zoom presentations on the current draft urban renewal plan. And in case any of the public aren't aware who are watching, all of the reports from these meetings of public feedback are available on our website. This poll was just a quick temperature check of the people attending those meetings. At the second set of meetings, more robust feedback and comments were gathered. And again, there are summaries of those on our website. You can both see just all of the feedback in a huge long list, and then you can see a report that our consultants put together that organize that feedback a little more, all on our website. Throughout our current draft urban renewal plan, there are references to the town's vision and the desire of the public. If we as the HRA are to genuinely use those words in an urban renewal plan, we need to make sure the plan is actually representative of the town's vision and the desire of the public. Also, in the fall, we solicited submissions. We had 20 citizen submissions when we asked the community for proposals. Some were from individuals, some were from groups of citizens, all had interesting ideas and concepts to consider, including the beautiful ideas in this model by Lisa French, truly a work of art, her models. Please do check them out on our website if you haven't already. And there were definite trends to these submissions. But let's talk about the HRA itself and what we find ourselves in the middle of here. The HRA touches on nearly all the hot topics our town is facing today. Climate resiliency, rising tides, more extreme weather patterns, low housing stocks, affordable housing, limited public open space, strain on town resources, public access to the beach, public transportation, tax revenue. As special as our town is, when it comes to most of these issues, we are not special. Most of these are not Hull-specific issues. Most of them are issues the entire country is facing, some combination of these. The HRA cannot and should not be expected to solve all of these problems, nor do I personally find it within our scope. Now, due to a variety of circumstances, the HRA has not been able to complete its last remaining town voted upon task, engaging in a redevelopment project. After 63 years, we will be lucky to find alignment between this board, townspeople, the select board, and the state, who are both required to approve an urban renewal plan in order to engage in a redevelopment project. But when we can complete a redevelopment project, the HRA can consider its job done, vote to disband itself, and then the town can approve that disbanding. We have an opportunity here. Though the HRA land is privately owned by us, we don't need to behave like a typical owner of property. We do not need to sell the land to the highest bidder or lease it out to get the biggest bang for our buck. In the same way that the HRA has adjusted its goals throughout the years to address town needs, we can take public good into consideration, and public good is priceless. We can do with this land what the private property in this town can't or won't do. We can make a choice to think about 2075 instead of just 2035. I will be in my 80s in 2075, so I am personally thinking that far in advance. And it really is time for us all to short-term gains versus long-term vision. In fact, our new floodplain zoning bylaw forces any developer of 3 units or more or commercial development to not just be aware of the future flood risk, but to minimize future flood impacts. They are required in their application to have a narrative describing proposed methods to minimize future flood impacts to the property and surrounding areas. And number 2 here that they are required is, of course, flood maps. Now, the HRA did actually have the Woods Hole Group put together a study of the property for the draft urban renewal plan. It is in the draft plan in the appendix on page 64, if you would like to check it out. That report includes flood maps, floodwater pathways, 3 concepts for coastal resiliency. The report very purposefully, or it was not within their scope to study the impacts on surrounding areas. And their final summary statement at the end of the report was, considering that the HRA properties have a significant flood risk potential that will only increase in the future, we recommend the HRA conduct its due diligence when reviewing any development proposals to ensure that development is flood resilient for both present and future conditions, will be permittable in the designated resource areas, and provides a degree of benefit to the community. To give an example of predicted flood risk, by 2030, 6 years from now, the Woods Hole Group model predicts a 10% annual chance of flooding for nearly the entire property. And this report is already a couple years old, and all those models are accelerating. Our town is already facing regular non-storm related flooding that is threatening people's property. And well, why? We all know 70% of our town is in the floodplain. Here's a map from our website showing the areas of our town in the floodplain. I'm sure you've heard of the MBTA Communities Bylaw, which is going to be, I assume, coming up for vote at this upcoming town meeting. The bylaw is because it is a priority of the state to create as many opportunities for housing as possible. What this means for communities is that we must designate sections of our town to allow for more dense housing. But the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection decided that all floodplain areas of our town, 70% of our town, were exempt from being considered for these zoning changes. The entirety of HRA land is in the floodplain. So what that means is that even if we did increase housing and or density in the floodplains of our town, that housing would not count towards our MBTA communities requirement. So in spite of the need for housing in this state, it appears that the state doesn't think it's a good idea to put more housing or additional density in these areas. And again, that includes HRA land. So where does that leave us? Considering the present and future of the town, the realities of climate change, the feedback from citizens, the lack of governmental obligation, and the freedom of opportunity allowed by an urban renewal plan, I would like to focus on the call for a sense of place. Now, what does that mean? Well, for 40 years, over 40 years, The HRA land has been used to enjoy sunrise and sunset views, access the beach and bay, and gather for community events. Why should that change? In case you don't know, in late 2022, I applied to the HRA to fill a vacant seat in advance of last year's election. I was pressed for my opinion on what should be done with the HRA property. I see you smiling, Dennis. At the time, I wasn't really sure. I was still researching, trying to better understand the history, and hadn't really yet begun talking to members of the public on their views. But when pressed, I gave the answer that I thought, at minimum, the property should be polished. Over a year later, after digging into the history of the HRA, understanding urban renewal plan regulations, speaking with so many citizens, listening to input at HRA meetings and everywhere else I ran into people in town, my answer still stands. Polishing. The Bayside Park has actually given us a beautiful proof of concept for the entire property. I have watched recent minimal improvements, benches, gazebo, activate that park. Every year, I see more and more people walking on the land, sitting on the benches, having picnics, meeting friends, bringing their kids, having events at the gazebo, walking their dogs, and that is with minimal improvements and features. Imagine what we could do by developing the main parcel of the HRA into a beautiful park, a unique park with ocean on one side and bay on the other. Imagine indigenous plants and trees, you know, the scraggy ones that somehow make it in this climate and look so distinctly Nantasket. Imagine park benches and picnic tables under those scraggy trees that can be used the entire year, and a place for beachgoers to go when the tide comes in. If there was a place to have a picnic when the tide came in and there was no beach, maybe they walk over to a local business, pick up some sandwiches, and go sit at a picnic table and wait for the beach to return. Imagine a raised platform right in the middle of the main lot where you could walk up to it and then turn 360 degrees to see multiple lighthouses, see World's End, see the length of the beach and the many drumlins that make up our town. On a macro level, my vision is a park, which includes areas for events, keeping and developing select parking lots with permeable surfaces, everything designed with climate resiliency in mind. If the HRA can help the town with climate resiliency in any way, I believe we should. Climate change is a threat to the existence of this town.
Great performance.
Corey, do you mind muting your microphone?
Yeah,
Thank
Corey,
you.
please.
On a micro level, there are many ideas that I'm also in support of that can be implemented on the short or long term, many of which have already been shared by my colleagues and our citizen submissions. Thank you for those. One that I'm super in favor of, pollinator gardens. We ain't got bees. We don't have much else, honestly. So I'd love to find a way to make that happen. These are just micro ideas. Another idea, I'd love an Nantasket beach sign somewhere on the HRA. With a gorgeous vista in the background that everyone who comes to visit, oh, well, you got to go take your picture in front of the Nantasket beach sign. I'm a sucker to it myself. Wherever I go and I see one of these signs, got to take a picture with one. Also, a little silly idea, but that I've run into, water collection towers. Please forgive this photo. It was taken out a car window, but those sculpture-y looking things in among the trees, those are for water collection. We know the strain on resources is great, so why not have a way for us to collect our own water to water those plants that we need in our park? And they can look really cool, kind of like sculptures also. And then art. Love the idea for wind sculptures, anything that local artists would like to collaborate with. Plus, I hope this is not a battle in this photo, but it's the best I could find. This is meant to hold the place for a relief of the neighborhood. A relief that we could have outside somewhere with some information about the history of this neighborhood and what was here before. That I would also love to see. Again, those are micro pieces of a macro idea. So you may be thinking, that's all so great, Adrienne. How are we going to pay for that? To which I say, let's get creative. I believe that this is possible through grants for open space projects, grants for climate resiliency, perhaps public-private partnerships, as well as the fact that the HRA has well over $1 million in the bank and regular income from parking. In regards to funding, in the same way that I don't believe it is the HRA's responsibility to solve all the town's problems, it is also not the town's responsibility to fund a redevelopment project on the HRA land. When the HRA is settled as community space, community open space, the town's quality of life will increase. People will come to experience this unique developed piece of land year-round, increasing values to properties and traffic to local businesses. We don't have to settle for short-term gains. I would ask my colleagues to reflect upon the realities of this property and the needs of the town today. We have the latitude to consider public good and longer-term vision. After all, we've waited all this time, so let's give the town something worth waiting for. Thank you so much.